All right, welcome to our first apple recipe of Apple Month. Now, this recipe was actually inspired by some of you. Several weeks ago, I shared recipes for single serve banana bread, find it up there, and single serve coffee cake. And you guys went crazy for them. You love them. But several of you asked if you could bake it in your air fryer because you didn't want to have to heat up your oven for one little ramekin. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I have owned an air fryer for a few years now, and I have rarely used it. So you inspired me. I decided I needed to learn to use my air fryer. So I pulled it out and I figured out how to make this week's recipe in the air fryer. Now, if you don't have an air fryer, totally fine. You can totally bake this in the oven also. But today we're gonna use the air fryer for our apple crisp for one. So for our apple crisp for one, we're gonna use a 6-ounce ramekin. I'm just gonna lightly grease. There we go. And then we are gonna prep our apple, and you're only gonna need one apple and probably not even the whole apple, depending on how big your apple is. Now, I like to use a Granny Smith apple or a Honeycrisp apple, but you use your favorite apple. I just find that a little tartar apple tends to work a little bit better. I like the flavor of it better. So I peeled and cored my apple, and we want to, I've decided, I experimented with slicing the apples in several different ways, and I found that dicing them or cutting them into little chunks, like about this size, 1/2 inch or so, works best versus thin slices. I found that the thin slices tended to dry out in the air fryer as they cooked. So just dicing up the apple worked best. So you just want to get your little pieces as close to the same size as possible so that they cook evenly. You just want enough apple that is gonna fill and kind of, let me show you. You want it really full because the apples cook down, reduce down as they cook. So I like to fill, so my one apple is gonna be just perfect to fill my little ramekin. But first of all, we're gonna put it in a bowl because we're gonna combine it with a few other things. But I have a trick I want to share with you first with apples. And if you wanted to prep your apple ahead of time, but you don't want your apple to turn brown, I've got you. We're gonna put some cold water in our bowl. About a cup or enough. You wanted enough water to cover your apple. Then 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Just swish that around. And then we're gonna add our apples into it. And we're gonna let them sit in there for just 5-10 minutes and then rinse them off. Now, don't worry, it's not gonna make your apples turn salty, but it will stop your apples from turning brown. Then you can put them into a little zippered bag, airtight container, put them in the refrigerator, and they will last for a couple days without turning brown. All right, so for our apple crisp, I've got my apple here in the bowl. We're gonna add in 1/2 teaspoon, teaspoon and a half, however much you want of sugar. Kind of just depending on how sweet you like your apple. And if you're using a sweeter apple, then you probably don't need as much sugar. I'm just gonna give it a nice little, I probably used 1/2 teaspoon there. And then I'm gonna give it a sprinkle of cinnamon. Again, I'm not really measuring, just enough to give it a light coating. If you like a lot of cinnamon, add in a little bit more. We want a pinch of salt. And then we're gonna add in, to give it some moisture so it kind of steams as it cooks, 1.5 tablespoons of water. All right. And then we're gonna pour that into our little ramekin. We're gonna get it all in there. And then I'm just gonna give it another sprinkle of cinnamon right there on top. And maybe a sprinkle of sugar. All right. Then we're gonna take butter, just about 1/2 teaspoon of butter, softened butter, and just put some little dabs of butter right on top of there. Now, we need a piece of foil. So we're gonna cover it with foil as it bakes. Now, before we put it in the air fryer, we're gonna cover it with foil. Now, in the air fryer, there's a lot of air movement, so you want to make sure that it's totally, wrap it around the bottom. Don't just lay it on top or else it will blow off. All right, there we go. And that's also gonna help steam it and get those apples to cook. All right, we're ready to put it in the air fryer. Now, mine is a Ninja Max air fryer. It's the only one I've ever used, so I don't have a lot of experience with other air fryers, but we are gonna use the bake option on our air fryer. We're gonna use bake, at 350, and this is exactly what you would do if you were going to use your oven, okay? Bake at 350 degrees, and we're going to start out at 10 minutes. And then we're going to check it, maybe stir it a little bit, and do another 10 minutes. And this is before, we're going to put a streusel topping on this, but not till after we bake it for 20 minutes total. All right, now one thing I like to do with my air fryer is use these air fryer liners. I will link to them down below in case there is any spillage, any bubbling over, anything like that. It makes cleanup so much easier. And you just set it right in there. And then we're gonna take our foil wrapped ramekin, set it in the middle of the air fryer. And then again, bake 350, 10 minutes. All right, while our crisp is baking away here, we're gonna mix up that streusel topping, which is my favorite part of an apple crisp. Now, if for some reason this apple crisp for one isn't quite enough for you, I do have an apple crisp for two recipe up there, and I have a full-size apple crisp recipe that I use a 9x13 that will feed a whole family, and then some that I will link to down below. All right, so we're gonna use a tablespoon of, I'm using old-fashioned oats. If all you have is quick oats, that will work too. We want a tablespoon of brown sugar and a tablespoon of flour. We're gonna use a sprinkle, 1/8 of a teaspoon or so of cinnamon, and then a 1/2 of a tablespoon of softened butter. We're just gonna put that in there, and then I've got clean hands. We're just gonna use our fingers to kind of rub that together to create a damp sand consistency for our streusel. You could try using a fork with this, but with this small amount, I find that just using your fingers works a lot better. Now, if you're a nutmeg fan, go ahead and just give it a sprinkle of nutmeg too. All right, our 20 minutes total is up, and we are gonna go ahead and take out our crisp. Now it is hot, so be careful. Whoa, yeah, and there is liquid in it, so if you tip it, it's gonna pour out all over your counter, just like I did. Now we're gonna take the foil off. You can see how, one piece of apple in there, the apples have cooked down. They're still above the rim of the ramekin. But we're gonna take that streusel topping that we made, and we're gonna just sprinkle that right on top and kind of push it down on there. Now this is my favorite part of apple crisp, is the crisp on top. Yeah, all right. So now we're gonna put it back in the air fryer, and you wanna make sure that you are putting it in the middle of the air fryer so that the topping browns evenly. So put it back in to the air fryer in the middle, and then we're gonna put it back in at bake at 350 degrees for 5 minutes. Now, like I said, you can totally do this in the oven. It's gonna take about the same amount of time in the air fryer as it does in the oven, 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes, or until that crisp topping is nice and golden brown and the apples are nice and tender. For the oven, you can put the crisp on to the apples from the very beginning, whereas in the air fryer, you wanna wait till the last 5 minutes. All right, our last 5 minutes is up. It's ready to take out. Now that liner we used also makes it a little bit easier to remove that little ramekin, that hot ramekin, out of the air fryer. All right, we're gonna just slide it off of here. You can see how nice and golden brown that topping is, that crisp is. The apples are tender and juicy, and of course we need to add a little something extra, and I'm going to use some of that caramel sauce that we made last week. If you missed that recipe, check it out up there. Small batch caramel sauce. It is a perfect addition to this apple crisp. All right, let's drizzle a little of that, and of course if you wanted, you could add a little vanilla ice cream. It's the perfect amount of apple crisp for one person, and it's done in the air fryer. So as part of Apple Month, I have another air fryer single serve recipe coming up for you. But if there is some other recipe that is either single serve, small batch, that you would like to see done in the air fryer, leave me a comment down below and I'll get to work on it. In the meantime, enjoy your apple crisp for one, and I'll see you in the next video.